Oh, it feels good to be caught up, guys. Hey everyone, welcome back to Andrew's Wizardly Reads, and as always guys, I'm Andrew, and today I got another book review for you. But before we get to that book review, make sure you are liking and subscribing, and hitting that bell notification so you can get regular updates for when I put out new content. I post every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And that said guys, this one's for the Cradle fans. You know who you are, and if you've read this, then you know what you like. Guys, I have been reviewing every single Cradle book. I just recently put out the batch review for books 5 through 7. Well, that means it's time for the batch review for books 8 through 10. This gorgeous book just released, and we're going to talk about it. But, you know, as always, this is going to be spoilers for the previous books. So if you are not caught up on Cradle, I highly recommend you go and read it. They're very, very, very quick reads. I mean, this is the biggest one of them, and it is just over 500 pages. That's 506 pages, but I mean, it's not too bad. So, yeah, in a regular trade paperback, it kind of shakes out to a little bit like 400 pages for like the longest book in the series. And Reaper is like the second longest, so they're like, you know, kind of beefy. Like this one's 420, so it's about 80 pages shorter. But guys, like, this series has been an absolute delight to read. We've still got 2 more books to look forward to in the future. Hopefully Will White sticks to his every 6-month schedule. We should have a conclusion to the series by the end of 2022. That said, guys, like, that makes me sad to think about. I am going to have timestamps so you can jump between books depending on where you are at. We are going to start with Wintersteel. Essentially, we're jumping right into spoilers, just so you know. At the end of Uncrowned, Yaren knocked Lyndon out of the tournament, guys. Like, I was like, what just I didn't even see it coming. And so now we are in a situation where usually we're following Lyndon progressing and progressing and progressing and progressing. And it seemed like the best way for him to progress was in the Uncrowned King tournament. But now it's just Yaren and Mercy left for the Akora clan. And of course, we've got Sephora just dominating everybody. And so basically what ends up happening is we get these bouts. This kind of follows the later half of the Uncrowned King tournament, while we have to deal with Lyndon kind of figuring out how to advance. Like, he figures out that, you know, I can go and join Fury on the battlefield against the Dread Beasts, and then I can try and, like, use my binding that way to try and advance. So basically, it's all about points! Like, that will make a lot of sense once you get to there. Because it's one of the greatest lines in the entire series. This isn't about battle. This is about points. Probably flubbed it. Don't even care. Guys, I laughed so hard. What we get here in Wintersteel is we really get an interesting dynamic of Lyndon being separated from Mercy, Orthos, all of these characters. He is out on his own amongst people who don't really like him. Like, he's with Pride. At no point in time has Pride ever expressed any sort of love for Lyndon. The end of this book, though. We can't talk about the end of this book yet because we will talk about that when we start the Bloodline part. The end of this book is chef's kiss. The payoffs that we get, the advancements that we get, because, I mean, come on, guys, this is progression fantasy. Of course we're going to get some advancements. We get to see a lot of advancements within Wintersteel. It's really, really interesting. Ethan just continues to be an absolute delight. Love me some Little Blue. I'm not really giving you any new information here. But guys, like, even though it's the biggest in the book, I think, or the biggest in the series, I think this is also one of the best. Specifically just because we take that time to really get to know Lyndon a little bit more. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not like we haven't been following Lyndon, but it's always been Lyndon with Yaren, Lyndon with Ethan, Lyndon with Orthos, some combination, and now we are just Lyndon, Little Blue, out by himself, and he's got to do it. So, I mean, even when he was training with the Akuras, he still technically had Mercy there with him. Now he doesn't have anybody. And so it's a really interesting dynamic. So that is Wintersteel, guys. I am about to spoil the end of this book, which is where the real payoff is. So, before we start talking about Bloodline, at the end of Wintersteel, not only does Yaren win the tournament, she becomes the uncrowned queen. She kills Sethganos with penance because the Abaddon descended and interfered with the tournament. We get Fury advancing to Monarch and then ascending to the Abaddon. We get Yaren becoming a Herald, Ethan becoming a Archlord, and we get Lyndon becoming a Sage at only Underlord. He basically realizes while fighting Sephora, after basically she loses the tournament, she's like, well, screw it, I'm just going to go kill your friends. And so she goes and starts fighting Lyndon, which is a bad idea. And Lyndon just realizes, I am the end. And straight up just obliterates her. Like, it's so good. So, Yaren has killed a Monarch. We have gotten a new Monarch. And then now we are ready for the payoff in Bloodline. Because basically, they've won. They've advanced. They're all ready to go. And then Dread Beasts start waking up. Oh no! I believe, I forget which Dread Beast it is, but it's one of the like mid-tier. There's 4 Dread Beasts. I don't have their names memorized, guys. But basically, what's interesting about Bloodline is it's a transition shift. It's always been about the advancement within these Cradle books. They're always advancing. They're always advancing. We still get that here, but not as much. Because basically now it's time to run back to Sacred Valley. The whole thing about Bloodline is the Dread Beasts, that the Abaddon have interfered, and they moved up the Waking. They've interfered with fate. And so the Dread Beasts are coming to Sacred Valley now. And Lyndon has to basically fight and go back into Sacred Valley. And the whole thing about Sacred Valley is Lyndon actually chose not to advance to Overlord. This is the first time we ever see him do this. And it's specifically because the suppression field around Sacred Valley hits harder the more progressed you are in your sacred arts. So anything above Underlord drains a lot faster. So he decides, I'm just going to stay an Underlord. And yeah, that'll be that. And so then he starts going into Sacred Valley. And of course, everybody decides to come along for the ride. And it's really interesting to get that perspective because everybody thought Lyndon was dead. And so Lyndon has to reintegrate into Sacred Valley, where the highest that they've ever even dreamt of is gold. And Lyndon is so far beyond gold that, like, they don't really know what to do with him. They don't believe him. They think his power is borrowed. And it's very interesting to see Lyndon not only come back together with his family, but try and, it's basically just a search and rescue book, which is Bloodline. But it's still really, really good. Is it the best in the series? No, but I had a lot of laughs because Dross is fantastic in this book, guys. Like, I have been, like, don't get me wrong, Dross has always been funny. But here in Bloodline, I mean, he had me rolling. I couldn't stop laughing at Dross. And I will definitely be revisiting the Cradle series because, frankly, there is so much to love here that it's hard not to. Alright, and with Bloodline basically explained, it's time to not only talk about the end of Bloodline, but get into Reaper. So this is spoilers for Bloodline. The spoilers for Bloodline is we lose Dross. Dross basically sacrifices his spiritual energy to help fend off the Dread Beast and kind of divert its attention. Our entire group of characters went into Sacred Valley, and Yaren got her gift from the Monarchs where she became a more stable Herald, so that because something about Herald is that, like, you kind of struggle to you merge spirit and everything like that. It's a really interesting experience. Basically, we find out that the difference between Herald and Sage is Sages are more introspective, while Heralds exude power. So they're basically the same tier, but like they're different in very, very interesting ways. Sages have more authority than Heralds, and so it's really, really cool because now that Yaren's a Herald and Lyndon is a Sage, we get to see like Yaren just blasting things, while Lyndon can blast things, but he uses his power subtly different than Yaren does. And like his way to advancement now is he's got to basically sit there and meditate on nothing. What I love about this is it finally feels like we've got real stakes here. Yeah, we brought Jai Long back into the fold, but like, don't get me wrong, he was a loose thread that I really, really enjoyed being picked back up. So I'm happy that they picked back up the Jai Long thread. I'm curious to see where it's going to go because there seems to be a relationship forming, at least in my brain, between Jai Long and Lyndon's sister. So that's going to be interesting to explore. Let's talk some Reaper. So the cool thing about Reaper is basically the whole driving force throughout the entire series is done. Like, Lyndon wanted to advance to save Sacred Valley. He thought he had 30 years, and now the Dread Beast has been diverted. The problem is now Lyndon is this high and mighty sage. And so he's an Underlord Sage still. Or no, he's an Overlord Sage now. Yeah, he's an Overlord Sage. He did advance, I believe, in Bloodline. And so he is this sage, and we actually, like, the first, 50 to 100 pages of this takes place over about a year, because they kind of formed the Sect of Twin Stars, which is Lyndon's whole sage sect, and he's started taking on acolytes. Like, it's this kind of weird thing where, like, Athan is just like, hey, join the sect, and here's the founder, Lyndon Aurelius. And really, like, Athan's the founder. We all know Athan's up to some mischief. But basically, Rhaegon Shen, the monarch, decides to infiltrate and release the Bleeding Phoenix again and go back into Sacred Valley, into the Labyrinth. And what's really cool about Reaper is we're trying to resurrect Dross. We're trying to get Dross back. But at the same time, this feels more like a dungeon crawler progression fantasy, which was kind of interesting because obviously the majority of this book takes place in the Labyrinth because they're going after Rhaegon Shen after Sacred Valley Suppression Field starts to drop. We get a lot of revelations, a lot of payoffs. We get so much here, and Reaper is set up for the rest of the series. Guys, I give each of these books solid 5 out of 5. All 3 of these books are utter progression fantasy perfection. I'll put it that way. If you like just fun progression fantasy, guys, these are masterworks. Not only are they just gorgeous covers, nice and glossy, but they nice and floppy. I love having physical copies of this. Thank you, Boiled Jellyfish, who has been sending these to me. But basically, Reaper is the payoff of everything. Like, I was nervous for Reaper. I was just like, where do we go after Bloodline? Like, it's done, it's over. Basically, the thing with Reaper is that we are kind of trying to figure out the last 3 books, like the ending trilogy. Like, how do we get there? Because we know that all of those Abaddon and Judge sections have to be in there for a reason. So basically, where we're at in this last 3 books is we're trying to figure out what to do with those last, 3 of, the 12-book series. Well, this is the first, this is number 10, and then we've got 2 more books. And I think the 11th book is going to be called Dread God, which is kind of interesting. Basically, where we end up here and everything that's going on is really, really interesting. I know I'm being coy, and that's on purpose, guys, because Reaper is so interesting. It's got a huge secret revealed, and if you're paying attention, you might be able to see it coming. It's not, like, super well done, because you're like, is that what's going on here? I think this is what's going on here. And that's fine, guys. It's absolutely fine, because I still kind of got a little choked up and it really delivered on those punches. So guys, that is going to be my non-spoiler thoughts here for this Cradle, for this bash review of Cradle. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of these 3 books, or just each individual one as you read them. I would love to know your thoughts, or if you want to talk on a more regular basis, you can click the description and jump on in to the Wizardly Duo Discord. We would love to have you there, or if you want to support the channel on a more regular basis, you can go ahead and sign up for the Patreon. Your support is always appreciated. And as always, guys, till next time, peace out, stay magical, bye. And as always, I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons.